Thank you for joining us today. I'm Barbara Kelly, the Associate Director of the Parents Program at the University of Notre Dame, and I am delighted to be meeting you this way through this live broadcast. The Parents Program works very hard to keep our parents informed about Notre Dame and to invite you to become engaged in the life of the university. Each month you receive a newsletter from me, an e-newsletter. There's a parents' website, which if you have not visited, I really do invite you to take a look at it, parents.nd.edu. And it has all kinds of information about the Parents Program, in addition to many, many links to all the other wonderful programs and offices that exist on campus. For the second year, we are bringing you a live-streamed broadcast to share more information with you about those programs which impact your students. I'd like to thank our panelists tonight for being here, taking the time to present their information about their programs. I'd like to thank the Office of Information Technologies and Claude Devaney for live streaming this broadcast. And I would give a special thanks to the DeBartolo Performing Arts Center for the use of this beautiful facility. This broadcast is coming to you live from the stage of the Leighton Concert Hall at the DeBartolo Performing Arts Center. Our speakers tonight are Kate Barrett from Campus Ministry, Tom Guinan from ND International, Mary Nucciaroni from the Office of Financial Aid, and Ryan Willerton from the Office of Community Standards. At the center of Notre Dame, everything that this university does is the basis of our Catholic faith. And so the Office of Campus Ministry is really the heart of student life programs at Notre Dame. Kate Barrett is the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Ministry. Kate and her husband are both double domers, Kate with an undergraduate degree as a PLS major and a Master's of Divinity. She's worked in campus ministry for 22 years and has 4 teenage children. So Kate, I invite you to share with us, with our parents, some information about campus ministry.
Great, thank you, Barbara. I'd like to say a little bit first in general about what campus ministry does, because some of those things might surprise you a little bit. And then I'll talk about a new initiative that we've just gotten started called the Anchor Leadership Program that we're really excited about. So first of all, in general, a little bit about what campus ministry does. We're responsible for all the liturgies that happen on campus. So everything from each of the residence hall chapels to everything that happens in the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, other campus masses that you might be familiar with, such as the Freshman Orientation Mass, JPW, the Baccalaureate Mass, and then there are smaller chapels in many of the academic buildings, and we support all of the liturgies that happen there as well. Along with that, all of the liturgical choirs on campus are housed in campus ministry, as well as our retreats programs and a growing number of pilgrimages, both to sites around the United States and around the world, as well as all of the sacrament support that people need on campus. So for example, students who came to Notre Dame not having been confirmed yet, or students who are interested in going through the RCIA program to become Catholic. All of that happens in our office. In addition to those kind of set programs that we do, we also deal with current events and issues when they come up. So for example, earlier this year when the Pope gave his interview to America Magazine, there was kind of a lot of buzz around that on campus. So we hosted a panel of faculty members and invited students to come and engage in a conversation about some of the things that Pope Francis has talked about. We had about 150 students come to that event just to listen to the experts and to talk about Pope Francis. So along with all of this, we've always sought in campus ministry to engage our students in leadership in these programs so that they help to plan them, they help have ownership of them, and they really feel involved and invested in all of our programs. So for example, our students help lead the retreats. They are leaders in the choirs and in our other music programs. They take on leadership roles in residence hall liturgies and in the Basilica. We have student sponsors for RCIA and confirmation. But we've had a sense for a long time that we wanted to kind of systematize their preparation for those leadership programs, that we wanted to make sure they were really prepared to lead in these ways, not only as students here, but also as people who would have something to contribute to the church when they graduated. And some information that came out of the university as a whole from exit surveys that students take when they graduate, we found that it really was right in line with what we had been thinking about. So when our students graduated, 90% of them said that they had been in some kind of a leadership position during the time that they were students here at Notre Dame. But only 12% of those students said they felt like they had been adequately trained for the leadership position that they were in. So this brings me to our Anchor Leadership Program, which we felt was really sort of validated by that statistic. We want to be sure that students who want to participate in any kind of ministry in the church are really well trained and formed and able to take on more and more leadership, both in service to the church here in our community at Notre Dame and to the wider church when they graduate. So let me just say a little bit about how Anchor is set up. We're just getting it started right now. We welcome all students as freshmen, and in particular students who indicate an interest in campus ministry activities or who were leaders in their high school campus ministries. And we really want to help them grow in their training and in their formation and in their faith development step by step from freshman year through senior year. So that some of them, if they've really gone through the program intentionally and are thinking maybe even about ministry as a profession when they graduate, would be eligible for paid internships as seniors in campus ministry. Students who go through Anchor Leadership participate in monthly meetings that have 3 parts. And you'll see how all 3 of these parts are helping to form them for leadership. One part is in catechesis, so actually learning the facts of our faith, learning the truths of who we are, understanding what it means to be a Catholic. The second part is in pastoral skills, so not just knowing about the faith, but understanding how to lead a prayer service, for example, how to conduct a small group faith sharing session, how to teach a Bible study. So the practical skills to put that knowledge into action. And then finally, the third part is formation and prayer. So helping them really grow and develop in their own faith lives so they feel like their relationship with God is growing as their skills are growing. Throughout the monthly training, we're also encouraging them to find ways to put this training into practice. So for example, we would encourage them to lead a retreat or a Bible study right in their own hall where they live. For older students, we might encourage them to work with off-campus students and encourage those students to go on a retreat or plan something specifically for the off-campus communities. And they would take on growing leadership roles in campus ministry as well, so that by the time they're a junior or senior, they might be running a whole retreat themselves. Along with that core Anchor Leadership Program, we have put into place what we call Anchor Associates. So those are students that might only be able or interested or have the time to take on a little bit of a smaller role, but still need some training for that role in particular. So for example, in an Anchor Associate role, they might be a Eucharistic minister at the Basilica or in their hall. They might be a sponsor for a friend of theirs who's going through confirmation. But for the Anchor Associates and the Anchor Core leaders, we want them always to be thinking about how they can be a lay leader in the church, under the dome as we call it, and beyond. So if we think about the wider church as a whole, who will be the leaders in the church in the future? Hopefully many of them will be Notre Dame graduates. As you probably have noticed if you've looked at the website, the nd.edu website in the last couple of months, the trustees were in Rome in January and had a chance to meet Pope Francis. And he gave a message to all of the trustees and to the leaders of the university who were there in January. And that message was to honor our Catholic identity and to give testimony to our faith in the world. And it really has been a great challenge, I think, to Notre Dame to try to figure out how we can embody that challenge. How can we live out the challenge to honor our Catholic identity and to give testimony to our faith in the world? So it's very gratifying and it's humbling as well in campus ministry to be a part of taking on that challenge and to throw it out there to our students that they are a part of that too now and when they leave the university as well. on campus in the residence halls, off campus in the Basilica, and after graduation, hopefully in the parish or the other community in which they find themselves. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. You know, as you were talking, it's a beautiful thought to think about our students, just like a pebble drops into a water and it spreads. Each one of our students who is involved with this program becomes like that pebble, and the ripple effect goes further and further and further out. And I think this is a great way to begin this panel tonight, especially on Ash Wednesday, with thoughts that our faith will continue through our students and the wonderful work of campus ministry, so thank you. I had a question. The other day I was I was in one of the dining halls, and I saw placards that were announcing the retreats that are coming up. And in my mind as a parent, I thought retreats were you signed up for any retreat, but that is not the case, correct? They are by year, so you have a sophomore year, et cetera. Could you just share with the parents a little bit about that?
Sure.
About the retreats.
Sure. Most of our retreats are geared for students in a particular class year, recognizing that freshmen are in a really different place in their faith and in their experience at Notre Dame than seniors are. And so we have a freshman retreat that's really like a welcome to the university retreat and helping students meet each other and meet other students who are interested in growing in their faith. We have a sophomore road trip. That's kind of a secret, so I can't say that much about it. The students don't know where they're going until they get on the bus, but that has become so popular that we actually have 2 of them now, and we're thinking about adding a 3rd one for next year. The junior year retreats are a little bit different because many of our students are abroad during their junior year, so we encourage juniors to go on pilgrimages in the places where they find themselves, and that's a real growing part of our program. We have a pilgrimage to Rome actually coming up for Holy Week this year. One of our campus ministers is going over to Rome and gathering everyone from the different European study abroad programs to come to the Vatican for the Triduum for Holy Thursday through Easter Sunday. So I know, it kind of makes you want to be there, huh?
I know all about that. I know all about that.
Can I be a chaperone?
Yeah,
that sounds fabulous.
I know.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I might have a chance to go to Mexico City actually next fall for a pilgrimage there. We just had a group go to Poland to the John Paul II sites in Poland. Yeah. So, and we're looking at a Camino trip to Spain in next summer.
So one of the ways that parents can come away from what you're saying is not only knowledge about campus ministry, but perhaps to encourage their students to make sure they take part in a retreat or a pilgrimage if they're studying abroad. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Kate.
Can I just ask a really quick question too,
Sure.
Kate, while we're here? From the enrollment division, I know a lot of times we get questions about what if I'm not Catholic? So I don't know if there are parents who are not of the Catholic faith, but what is the role of campus ministry in engaging the non-Catholic students? I mean, can they go on the retreats or these other experiences? I don't know I know we don't have lots of time, but I'd love to hear just even.
Sure. We, any student is welcome on any of our retreats, so that would be one thing, and certainly the pilgrimages too, if they're studying abroad or if they'd like to just go on one of the pilgrimages that leave from here. And then we have a group called Iron Sharpens Iron that is a non-denominational Christian praise and worship and fellowship group that a lot of students get involved with. That is housed in our office too. If students would prefer to go off campus, to go to a church of their own faith, we have connections with most of the local churches and synagogues and the mosque in South Bend. And what we do is connect a student with someone from that community, and they are usually so gracious about offering rides and letting them know when things are going on in that community. So we try to do that as well.
That's great.
So,
thank you. Thank you very much. The Office of Community Standards is a newly created revised program from what used to be called Res Life. And the reformation of that program is very, very important. And Ryan Willerton is going to share a little bit of information about that. Ryan is the director of the Office of Community Standards and joined that office as director after 15 years of service to Notre Dame's Division of Student Affairs. And this Office of Community Standards is located in the Student Affairs Division. Ryan's other roles at Notre Dame have included the Assistant Director of Residence Life and Housing and Director of Student Activities Facilities. Ryan has 2 younger children.
Thanks a lot, Barbara.
counting down the days until my kids get to the college application procedures, and whether or not they'll get into this prestigious university, which I will be praying for, particularly during the Lenten season. Yes. So, in the next few minutes, folks, what I'd like to share with you is a little bit of information about the background of the changes from Res Life, or the Office of Residence Life, into the new revised model of the Office of Community Standards. Talk a little bit about how that process happened. Also talk about some of the refinements that Barbara referred to. And then I'd also like to close with a few tips. So as we work our way backwards, the Office of Residence Life, or Res Life as our students have known it by, has been on campus for about 30 years. And over that time, we've realized that it hasn't changed much. It was a very, very strong program, had very good name recognition, but what was also very straightforward. And it was very consistent with the outcomes or the sanctions through our conduct process. And we realized over time that maybe it's not meeting the needs of our changing college student population as effectively as possible. So we had a change in the Division of Student Affairs leadership a few years ago, and it provided an excellent opportunity to do a self-study, what we call the conduct process review, to look at everything related to how we interact with students when they've allegedly violated a university standard of conduct or a policy. There's been an alcohol infraction, a drug infraction, parietals, which is our undergraduate residence hall visitation policy that I'm sure many of you have probably already heard about. But really what we focused on was not changing policy, but changing the process and the procedures. So what we did was we took a global look at it. We did focus groups with students, faculty, staff, alumni. As we looked at our student population, we not only received feedback from students who participated in our process, but we also received feedback from students who have not been through our process. And that provided quite a bit of interesting information. And what I'll share in a few minutes about our myths and our ghost stories, and this concept of Res Life. That's where a lot of it emanated from. Students who didn't know anything about the process, had never participated in the process, and it really created a hindrance to the educational mission that we have. And that's really the focus, whether it was under the Office of Residence Life, whether it's through the Office of Community Standards. At the end of the day, just as everybody else across the Division of Student Affairs and across the university, Kate working with campus ministry, it's all about formation and student development. So it's really a renewed focus and a renewed emphasis on that quality that we're seeking to develop within our student population. Meeting the needs of our students and their individual specific needs, but also balancing the needs of our community to realize that we have a very strong residential population, a very strong residence hall program, and the expectations are very high for our students. They're aware of these expectations, and it's our responsibility as an office to help educate them, to understand, and most importantly, to engage them in dialogue. Sometimes those dialogues happen when there have been alleged violations of our standards of conduct. And really what we focused on through this process and benchmark researching 17 other colleges and universities, Catholic universities, private universities, even public universities, seeing how other people do things, but also ensuring that we've made sure that the University of Notre Dame is a unique place, it's a special place, it has Catholic traditions, and it has Holy Cross influence. And we want to ensure that that informs all of the work we do on a day-to-day basis. So coming out of the conduct process review that took about 2 years, we had a number of findings. And those findings were that, first of all, there were really good things that Residence Life was doing in how that program was structured. But we also realized there were some opportunities for improvement, whether it was the name of the office, the branding of the office, how we interacted with students. Are there other opportunities for us to engage them in meaningful dialogue? The other piece that I referred to earlier was this concept of myths and ghost stories. So students who have never participated in the process, students who point fingers, who say, you're getting sent to Res Life, or you're being Res Lifed. It's an interesting, phenomenon when we go to our professional conferences. We just got back from sunny Tampa, Florida, with 50-degree rainy weather down there, which is a little bit different than South Bend in February. But hearing feedback from others that they're not verbs, that it is about education on other campuses. And that's one of the missing components that we had. So through this process review, we had an opportunity to really restructure and reframe the message to our students and to our faculty. and to our hall staff and the rest of the administration. And now, as we expand the circle of influence that we have and the information we're able to disseminate, we want to be as transparent as possible, and we want to be as accessible as possible. And that'll be referred to in a few of the tips I'll share at the end. The other piece that we realized was that there were some procedural inconsistencies. So if a student happened to have an interaction with Notre Dame Security Police, or maybe with another police agency off campus, or maybe a building manager, they were automatically, quote-unquote, res-lifed and sent to the Office of Residence Life for a conversation. However, we also realized that students who engaged in similar behaviors inside the residence halls would not be referred to the same place. And that's part of where the myths and the ghost stories happen, where students express concerns and say, so it's okay if I do it here, but it's not okay if I do it there. And it was this divergent message that was sent strictly on a process that we had. So I'll talk about a few changes in just a couple minutes, but that was one of the key areas that we focused on. The other piece is identifying the most appropriate outcomes. So we used to call them sanctions. Part of the language change that we have is we now refer to them as outcomes. So you have a meeting and you have outcomes. It's not intended to be punitive. It's not intended to be punishment. Sometimes it does feel punitive for the most egregious violations, which could result in separation from the university. And we do have students, unfortunately, who are temporarily or permanently dismissed, but it is a small, small fraction of a percent of students that we deal with on a regular basis. And those are for the most egregious incidents. But the majority of the conversations that we have, the vast majority of them, we want to focus on learning and we want to focus on growth. So this concept of giving a student a fine, telling a student you need to complete 20 hours of service, really doesn't tie back to the behavior they engaged with. Under the old model with Residence Life, we engaged in a lot of community service, thousands of hours every year. If a student was found responsible for violating our alcohol policy, 20 hours of service or a $200 fine. If they were found responsible for violating our parietals or our visitation policy, 20 hours of service, $200 fine, your choice. So we also looked at it from a socioeconomic perspective. We met with some students where we would communicate a sanction to them under the Residence Life model and say, you can work 20 hours of service to give back to the community, or you can pay a $200 fine. And some of those students would pull out a checkbook, write a check for $200, and walk out the door. And there wasn't much learning. Part of the other feedback we learned from students is that although they enjoyed their community service opportunity and they found great value in that, it really didn't tie back to the behavior. So that is part of the focus and part of the change that we have. And the last finding that we realized was that this concept of a student conduct record, my quote-unquote file, is very, very important to our students. So we've modified what we call our conduct records reporting policy, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So coming out of those findings, and there were more findings that we actually have a nice comprehensive summary on our website at ocs.nd.edu or communitystandards.nd.edu, whichever one is most convenient for you to find. But coming out of the conduct process review, we had three themes: transparency and accessibility, and that's what we're hoping for with dialogue like tonight. The next piece is education of the Notre Dame community. And when we say the Notre Dame community, students, faculty, staff, alumni, parents, family members, so that everybody understands what we're hoping to accomplish. And the last piece is adherence to the administration of our student conduct program, keeping in mind our unique Catholic heritage and in the traditions of our Holy Cross foundings. And that really goes back to what Kate was referring to with Father Jenkins and the Board of Trustees when they met with Pope Francis, and honoring the Catholic identity. That is really what we're hoping for through part of our conduct process. So as we meet with students, we have opportunities to engage them in dialogue about incidents, values, beliefs, and sometimes those conversations also turn to faith and how they're doing as a student, how their adjustment is to college, how can we help them succeed. So it's not a dialogue about you're in trouble, you did something wrong, you're a bad person, you don't have good character. That's not the purpose of our process, and that's not the focus of our process, and that's not part of our process at all. It's about a dialogue about our expectations, about student choices and decisions that they've made, and how we can help move them forward. So in the last few minutes that I have to speak with you, I'd like to share with you some of the refinements. So the biggest one is the name change. So moving from the Office of Residence Life, which no other college or university had an Office of Residence Life that did student conduct. I'm sure many of you watching this video were thinking Residence Life is probably dealing with student housing and assignments of beds and who my roommate's going to be. We actually have an Office of Housing that a lot of folks didn't know about. They assumed that our office did everything. So we articulated that it's community standards. And those two words were very much chosen for their meaning. Community, and how important it is with our residential mission, and standards. The standards are expectations. They're not directives, they're what our expectations are for our students, and how we hope for them to grow and learn as they spend their years at Notre Dame. The next piece is really this renewed focus on formation and student development. As we talked about the consistency in process, we wanted to move away from consistency in sanctioning or consistency in outcomes for consistency in process. So we used to have two meeting settings. You either went to a conference or a hearing. We created a new third setting, so we have now a meeting, a conference, and a hearing. And that meeting setting is intended for a first-time violation, first-time alcohol violation, first-time parietals violation, something that we know is intended to be a formative conversation that will not result in probation, separation from housing, or separation from the university. And the person that has that conversation is the rector. If it's an undergraduate student living in a residence hall, it's with the rector. That person who would know the student best, who can have a one-on-one conversation about their formation, their development, and their choices. The student happens to violate the same standard again, say they have another alcohol-related incident, then they'd be referred to our office for a conference. If there's serious matters, drugs, theft, sexual misconduct, sexual assault, those would go automatically to a hearing, where we would talk about a student's status at the university and really question whether or not they belong in this community based on their decisions and based on their behavior they've engaged in. And the last piece that we have is this conduct records reporting policy that I referred to earlier. So in the past, if a student was applying to medical school, to law school, and they signed a release saying, yes, you can disclose my conduct record, we would share any information that we had related to a documented conduct meeting with our office. So it would be freshman year, I had a 20-minute parietals violation, and I received 10 hours of community service. So the university would report back and say, this student had an infraction of our visitation policy, and they completed their outcomes, and we see no reason why this should have any bearing on their application. Under the new conduct records reporting policy is we're reframing things, that this is really about development and formation. So unless the outcome is disciplinary probation, which is pretty rare, temporary dismissal, which is more rare, or permanent dismissal, which is almost never happens. If it's one of those three outcomes, then we would disclose information to external entities from the university with the consent of the student. So the student would have to say, please disclose my conduct record, and we would share information about violations and what the outcomes were. But if it's anything else, that's considered an educational moment, a learning opportunity, and a formative conversation. If a student wishes to share that, we have mechanisms in place to help them communicate that information. We expect our students to be honest on the applications that they complete. But we also have a mechanism in place to say there are important things that need to be communicated. There's other things that don't need to be. And going along with Tom, and I know he's going to share a few thoughts here towards the end of our presentation, there is information that we also share within the university community when there's an educational need to know. So maybe there's repeat alcohol-related incidents where a student has not been put on probation or they haven't been dismissed. But it's something that international studies should be aware of, because if we're going to send a student around the world with minimal supervision, we want to ensure that they're making the right decisions. So there's a difference between external reporting and internal reporting.
Ryan, there certainly have been a lot of changes to the program, and certainly it's to make our students more aware of what they do and the impact that their actions have, not just on their friends within their residence hall, but on the larger Notre Dame community and beyond that. So a question for you, and to help our parents a little bit here, how can we parents help you help our students?
Sure, that's a great question, Barbara. And really what it comes down to is communication. And keeping the lines of communication open, not just from the student to the parents, but also the parents back to the students. Maybe before they come to Notre Dame, or even during spring break, or at the end of an academic year, before they start another year. talk about your expectations. What are your values? Sometimes parent values may not align specifically with the university's values. Maybe you have higher standards. Part of the process that we work with our students is to discuss what are their values and what are their beliefs. And a lot of the times when we do reflective written exercises with our students, they refer to the conversations with their parents. That I'm ashamed of myself, I didn't make a good decision, but at the end of the day, the people I let down most were my parents. And sometimes that is the most valuable lesson that we have. Student doesn't need to be punished. Student doesn't need to be getting in trouble. It's to have that realization that there's a reason they're here, and we want to support them as much as possible.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you. In order to have a really great university, to provide a great education for our students and to offer valuable programs to the students, there is tuition. Tuition costs are central, really, to a parent's relationship with any university. Mary Nucciaroni is the Director of Financial Aid. She has been 30 years a professional financial aid representative, 10 years at Notre Dame, and 20 years at St. Mary's. Mary also has a St. Mary's alum and a current St. Mary's student. So Mary, she is a wealth of information. So if she doesn't answer, as is everyone up here, so if she doesn't answer your question, please note that everybody has a contact piece in front of them, so you can either email, call, or try to contact us in any way to answer your question. So Mary, please.
Thank you, Barbara. It's really a pleasure to have the chance to be on the panel this evening, today, and to share some information and hopefully demythicize our process as well. So hopefully some of the information I can share with you tonight will help with that. Hopefully you received a letter from Father John about tuition for next year. And I think with that letter, just truly a heartfelt message that says, we really are trying at the university to control costs. We understand that families are truly making a significant financial sacrifice to allow their student to enroll at the university. And we value that. And what we are hoping is to provide, and I think from each of us, hopefully what you see and you hear and your student experiences is a holistic education that will return on your investment throughout their lifetime. Not just about making money, but truly about being a good contributing citizen to society. And so that's really part of the value that we're trying to deliver. With that said, we know that the cost of tuition is rising. And again, with that, the university is going to continue to provide additional need-based financial aid. That's where our commitment will continue to be. Right now, approximately 75% of the undergraduates, not including athletes, are receiving some form of assistance through our office. So we realize that the range of financial capacity is very, very different. And so many of you come with different needs to our office, and we have a staff that is available to try and help you through that process of how to finance an education and realize it's not all out of current income for the majority of families who are choosing Notre Dame. To look and focus on 2014-15, hard to believe that we're already at that part in our cycle. We are working on application process for continuing students. So you must reapply for financial aid every year. It's not an automatic process, with the exception of our limited merit aid dollars. Anyone who is receiving university scholarship or alumni club scholarship, federal grants, federal loans, there is a reapplication process. That process requires two applications, the free application for federal student aid and the CSS financial aid profile application. A little bit different, particularly if we have parents of first-year students listening. You were well into this process last year at this time, and you were waiting for, in about 2 weeks, you'd get that financial aid notice. Those of continuing students, the bad news is we do our freshmen first. The good news for the freshmen is we do them first. So the priority date for submitting financial aid applications for our continuing students, and again, you may be entering the process as a first-time continuing student parent. That application submission date is April 25th. We really prefer that you wait until your tax return is done. That way you can use completed tax information to complete the CSS profile. And relatively new to the federal process, it is what is called the data retrieval tool, which allows you to move into the IRS website and retrieve your tax information and push it onto the free application for federal student aid. Because of that availability, we have made a significant change this year in our financial aid reapplication or application process, and that is that we are no longer requiring tax returns from all applicants. So hopefully that is a relief to many of you, but again, what we're doing is we've pushed that deadline to April 25th, so those of you who are going to file April 15th still have 10 days to meet our application priority date. You can apply after that date, you'll still be considered on time, but hopefully that relieves some of the burden. And again, we're not asking you to send your tax documents or any other documents either to our office or through the College Board IDOC service, which you may have done in the past. There are some cases where we will ask for additional information. You do not need to send us anything unless we specifically reach out, and again, remember those information requests go to your student at the Notre Dame email address. We will also be sending reapplication reminders within the next week to 10 days. Again, that information will go to your student with a strong suggestion that they send that email to you. You'll also be able to see the reminder through Irish Pay. So those of you who are using that portal to pay your Notre Dame charges, that portal will have information, and our actual website, financialaid.nd.edu, has very specific information as well about the financial aid application process. In terms of actual decisions for our continuing students, those begin about the second week of May. So again, first-year parents, if you haven't heard from us yet, don't panic because you're on a very different time schedule as a continuing student. So second week of May, we begin. Students, one of the best things they can do is make sure that you are aware they can track their financial aid information as well as their financial aid notification through the community portal called Inside ND. So if you haven't learned about that yet, I think Barbara probably has information on her website about that. It is a wealth of information that's available to the student, and again, you can see the financial aid notification through your student through that portal before we can even get an award notification to you. I know we've also had a lot of questions about how do I structure financing. Along with the financial aid notification that started last year, we started to include a family responsibility form, a document, as well as a personal financial planner, giving you suggestions about how you might pay your family's share, whether you're receiving financial assistance or not. That document is available again through our website. Some brief information about summer school. The registrar's office is the central site for summer school. Students who will be attending summer school, whether that would be on campus here at Notre Dame or through Notre Dame Study Abroad, they must complete the application process for financial aid that I just described, the FAFSA and the profile, and a summer financial aid application, which is already available on the financial aid website. All of those documents then are considered for financial assistance for summer school. That is on, like I said, our website under Current Students, Planning, Summer Session. You'll find that application. Costs for the summer programs are actually outlined with that financial aid application, so you can estimate what might the cost be for tuition, for housing, for books, and come up with a budget and how would the student, and a plan for how would they pay. And that is true also for summer study abroad. That summer school application will not have the cost information, but there is a wealth of information on the Study Abroad, International Study Abroad website, and I know Tom is going to cover that in his comments. Transitioning over to study abroad in general, again, Tom's going to talk a little bit more about what you as a parent need to be thinking about when you consider study abroad. So I don't want to replace his thunder. We'll give Tom that opportunity. But just a couple of comments from the financing perspective. Need-based financial aid is available for academic year programs. So if a student is going to go on a full year-long program or in a fall study abroad or a spring study abroad, the aid travels with that student as long as it's a Notre Dame program. The costs are increased. I'm not going to get into great detail. That detail's available on the OIT website, International Studies. I gave the wrong acronym, sorry. OIS, but that information is available there. The good news is if the student is receiving need-based scholarship, the scholarship will increase to increase that study abroad for that year. And if the student is receiving work as part of a financial aid package here on campus, we will replace that in as much as we can with financial assistance from federal loan programs. In terms of summer study abroad, those programs have, like summer aid in general, there is limited scholarship assistance available for summer study abroad. So most students are using loan funds. There are outside scholarships. Again, we have information on our website that connects to International Studies website. We also have a very comprehensive frequently asked questions document about study abroad that is available on our website. Again, it's in that same current students under study abroad. So I would invite you to look at that because many of the questions that you may have about study abroad from a financing or a financial aid perspective, we've put those out there with an answer for you. So hopefully, again, you can build on what I've said tonight. Another common question that we get at this point in time of year is about the student who wants to live off campus. So again, there is a very detailed, frequently asked questions, a document on our website again, which again, I would encourage you as parents to review that information. Know that the financial aid would stay the same. What changes is your bill. So you would no longer be billed for room and board. So sometimes what we hear in our office is students think it's cheaper to live off campus. So Barbara mentioned that I had a graduate of St. Mary's, and she gave me that argument, and I know differently. So what I would say is caution. And students don't always think about utility hookups or utility costs or how am I going to get to and from campus. If I'm in a club, how is that going to work? If I'm in any kind of program or study group, how am I going to get to and from campus? What is my safety? So I think there are a lot of considerations that are beyond financial that you need to think about, but there certainly is a financial implication in terms of deposits, upfront rent. Again, it's a good opportunity for learning, but I will tell you as a parent who went through that, I'm not sure that I would say yes again. I'd be very unpopular with your children, I'm sure. And again, it's not because we want to keep students on campus, but again, some students are ready for that experience. Some students are just not ready for the complexity of what it is to live in off-campus housing near Notre Dame. I would also give a plug for the parent website that Barbara mentioned at the beginning. Our office does a lot of communication with Barbara and her team because we know sometimes students aren't the best about sharing information that we send to them that's really intended for you. So we've really built a collaboration with Barbara and her team to try and make sure that information about financial aid, billing processes, things that might be changing are also present on the parents, .nd.edu website, and we try and keep that current and send her that in advance so it comes to you before it's actually happening. So that would be the end of my comments here tonight.
Thank you very much, Mary. Mary has so much information. It's such nitty-gritty, those kinds of things that you want to know, which is how a lot of the information is shared with you in the monthly newsletters for parents. So it comes from all of these wonderful sources. And Mary did mention a few times the websites. I again want to reiterate that every program here has a beautiful website with tons of information, as do many programs, most of the programs at Notre Dame. So I really do encourage you to look at those websites. Tom has been waiting patiently to speak with you now and to share his information. The Notre Dame International office is comprised of many programs, and that includes study abroad. The reorganization of those programs into Notre Dame International is very significant because of the impact that it has on our students. Tom Guinan is the Associate Vice President of ND International. He is a triple domer. He has a bachelor's in accounting and in theology and a master's in theology. He's been at Notre Dame for almost 12 years, serving as Associate Controller, and is now Associate Vice President for ND International. To me, the best thing about Tom Guinan is that he is a Notre Dame parent. So now he's seeing his position and the issues of studying abroad from your side of the table, but he's sitting on this side. So Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. So I have about an hour.
Yeah, I think that's about what we need, but no.
Thank you. This has actually been very informative for me, so I appreciate actually being part of this panel because I've learned a few things, and hopefully I can learn a few things from me tonight as I speak. I did want to give a little bit of background on just how important international educational experience is as a part of Notre Dame's overall strategy for undergraduate education. You may know that the university just released its strategic plan, the updated strategic plan on Monday called A Legacy Expanded, and if you go out on the website, you'll be able to see it. It's on the banner page. One of the key goals of that plan is to deepen our students' global engagement as part of the undergraduate experience. And I'll just read a brief excerpt from the plan itself. It says, students' undergraduate years often represent their first real opportunity to experience different cultures firsthand, encouraging their development as well as informed and broadly educated thinkers. So it's a very important goal for the university broadly to encourage students to explore international educational experiences. And also recently, Notre Dame International made a commitment, a public commitment to the Institute of International Education, which is the leading industry advocacy group for international education, responding to their challenge to double the participation of study abroad across the country in terms of the number of students who actually participate. And in the letter that we sent to the IIE, we specifically cited the need to increase participation from the STEM fields, the science, technology, engineering, and math fields, where we don't see the participation that we currently want. We pledge to increase that participation by at least 20% by the end of this decade. And so we're going to be doing that through a number of changes in our study abroad programs, but also offerings that we have outside of the traditional study abroad academic year model. And I'll talk about those just in a few moments. Just to give you a sense of the magnitude of the study abroad or the international educational experience at Notre Dame, many people do traditionally still associate study abroad with that academic year, full semester, or full year programming. That is a big component of what we do, and we send roughly 700 students abroad each year across the semesters. But most people are surprised to realize that we also have 900 other students going abroad in other programs outside of this traditional study abroad model, whether that be in the summertime or for break period grants or things that are departmentally sponsored. And we also had in 2012-13, we had 314 students travel internationally with clubs, with football. The football program going to Dublin was a big program that we sent students abroad. So in total, over 2,000 students went abroad in 2012-13, and only 700 of those were associated with the traditional study abroad programs. So that gives you a sense of the magnitude. I did want to focus now on a couple of just frequently asked questions, I guess, series of questions, so thematic questions. With respect to the specific study abroad programs, the academic year, semester-long programs, we did just send out our notifications a few weeks ago in terms of acceptances for the 14 and 15 programs. And this is always a difficult time for us, especially in the last few years, as we're able to accept fewer and fewer students into the programs, and the demand for those programs actually has increased. And so I wanted to point out to the parents, all parents, that well over 90, I would almost say 99% of the students who apply to the study abroad academic year programs are academically qualified and are otherwise eligible to participate. Ryan did mention that we do have discipline issues where we have to review to make sure that students are appropriately prepared to go to study abroad programs. But nearly all of these students are qualified to go. Our primary limiting factors are budget constraints and then the capacity of the programs themselves. And so it's very difficult for us to tell upwards of 200 students that they simply can't participate in the program either because we don't have funds or we don't have room in the programs. But I did want to point out that there's a strong initiative, partly based on the strategic plan, to increase those numbers dramatically and in the near term. So hopefully by 2015-16, we're able to change that model so that we can accept as many people who are qualified to go as our programs can handle. And so that's very hopeful, something to look forward to on the horizon. But the situation that we find ourselves in now also gives us an opportunity to emphasize those other opportunities that are available to students. And so we've learned just anecdotally that many students who didn't get into their first preference academic year study abroad program have found much more fulfilling opportunities through centers and institutes or through their departmental programs, which could be shorter in nature but much more intense and immersive. And they really do benefit from those and say, you know, in retrospect, that actually was the best thing for me. And we also have situations where students who are in particular majors, like the science fields, the academic year programs aren't best for them in terms of their overall curriculum needs, where they need to have certain classes and certain progressions. So we do emphasize to students there are more options than just the traditional academic year study abroad programs. Mary did such a nice job talking about financial aid that I'm not even going to step into that water too deeply. But I do want to acknowledge that one question that parents ask very frequently is, why do I have to pay full tuition when my student going abroad is going to an institution that I can see either on their website or because they tell me that the tuition is much less than Notre Dame? And that is a complicated issue, and many schools address that issue in different ways, where some say, you know, take a leave of absence and go enroll in the school directly. I'll just say for the purposes of this program that our primary focus at Notre Dame International is to provide the best academic and cultural options for students when they go abroad as possible, while still retaining the full support structure back on campus, whether it be related to financial aid or health and safety or registrar, course grade selection, residential life, anything that you can think of. And so that's our primary goal, is to make it as integrated to the student's experience as possible with that, as opposed to having them feel like they've left the university and then have to come back. So it is a complicated issue. We're going to try and put some more information on our website so that parents can investigate that themselves and just ask any more detailed questions as they might arise. I did want to shift focus now for a minute. One of the most important aspects of any international educational experience that we're aware of here on campus is health and safety. Regardless of whether it's a study abroad program run through NDI or any of the other programs that send our 900 students abroad, it is a key aspect of the international experience that we really want to make sure parents are aware of and that parents feel comfortable about. And so in Notre Dame International specifically, with the support of the Provost's office and the Executive Vice President, we've added a dedicated resource to our group. Susan Soyson is her name, who is the risk management, the health and safety person specifically charged with ensuring consistency around our risk management activities across all international educational programs. And we also are taking some steps to make parents and students more aware of the differences in these educational programs. And so we have a wide range of program offerings. Some are highly structured, high levels of support for the students. Notre Dame staff oversees helping the students in all aspects of their life, to intentionally independent programs where students are effectively on their own by design to carry out research or to conduct other types of academic endeavors. And so we want to make sure that parents and students are aware that the level of support may be different, and as they're making their choices as to which program to explore, they're aware of that. And we've had instances where parents and or students weren't aware of that, and they were caught by surprise when something actually did happen while their student was overseas. We are looking also at a very high level of emphasis on pre-program awareness. So once a student has decided where they want to go, that they are given enough information beforehand to share with their parents and to also think about themselves. And something as simple as a checklist is something we've developed for parents, for students, and we're considering developing one shortly for faculty as well. But these checklists are in some ways common sense in that you say, well, of course I would think about these aspects of the international programs, but sometimes one question or another isn't asked, and so we want to just put it all on one concise, one piece of paper, two-sided, so that parents and students can think about things themselves, but more importantly, talk with each other about the types of programs that they are going to be embarking on. So areas like just basic communication, who will I communicate with and how will I communicate while I'm overseas? Finances, how will I get money? What will it cost me in addition to the basic programmatic cost? Health and wellness, just basic issues of if I need to get to a doctor, do I know how to do that? Mental health is always a very real issue in a lot of our programs because these can be somewhat traumatic experiences when you leave South Bend going overseas and finding yourself in an entirely different environment. And then also students who travel while they're traveling abroad. So they'll go for weekend trips overseas. Frequently our students in London go to the continent on the weekends, and that's part of the program. But do you have contact information and do you know what to do if something happens while you're traveling as part of your program? So these are items that we're going to have, we're fine-tuning them, we're putting them out on the website in a few weeks. Mary did just mention to me something that is not on here that we should put as a sort of a parent checklist item is how will this international educational experience potentially impact your ability to graduate on time? Mm-hmm. Some students may take courses that will throw them out of kilter with their major. They may take electives that don't move them more closer towards graduation because they're not university approved courses. It's a question to ask, is this going to add another semester to your experience at Notre Dame? And I think there are a lot of implications on that as well. So it's something that as a parent, I'm finding this very helpful because my son recently asked me a lot of questions about a potential study abroad opportunity that I couldn't answer, and so I had to break out the checklist and say, well, let's look and see what it says here. With respect to the parents, I've referenced a lot of the parent needs already, but we've also realized at Notre Dame International that when we had promoted international educational experience, either in our group or if other groups promoted those as well, it was the conversation was mainly between the student and the sponsoring office and potentially with the faculty advisor of the student. But the parents never really had any structured interaction with the programs that were being offered. And so we realized that we've come to that realization as to how critical the parents' role are. And so I thank Barbara for inviting me here to speak today because part of that awareness raising is this call itself, this webinar. This live stream presentation rolls off the tongue. This is a big part of how we're trying to get parents engaged in the international educational experiences, because we realize, as I think both Mary and Ryan mentioned, and probably Kate, much of what parents know about what their students are doing here is based on what the students tell them. And if the students don't tell them, and the parents don't know questions to ask, they may make assumptions that are either incorrect or incomplete. And so we want to have parents, to give parents an independent resource, if you will, to find out about programs, to engage their children in really constructive ways. And on a more tactical level, if you will, when something happens to a student overseas, the first responders, if you will, are the parents. The students will typically call the parents, and if the parents don't have any pathway to either get help for their student or to interact with their student to help the student, then you get confusion at the very least. And I tell the story about the way the uncoordinated chain of communication works currently. A student who, we received a call in Notre Dame International from the security police here on campus saying that a parent had a concern about a student somewhere in Brazil, maybe somewhere else in South America, We had the name. The student didn't show up on any of our rosters for any of our South American programs. It turns out the student actually was in a city in Europe that sounded like it was a city in South America. And so it was really just hours and hours wasted trying to find out where the student was, who it was. It wasn't a critical issue, but it really just made everyone think if it were a critical issue, that would not have been an effective response. And so we're trying to just streamline all of those aspects of the parents' engagement in our programs, in the educational experience programs. And we're also just trying to give the parents as many resources as possible so that they can engage their children pre, during, and post their international educational experience.
That's really amazing information to know, and I do have that checklist here.
Yeah.
When will our parents whose students are studying abroad or planning to go abroad receive something like this?
I expect that this has gone through final review. I think it's going out on our website, and we'll let the parent website know of that as well. Pretty soon, within the week, I think we're just getting some final edits and some final input. And it's a checklist that will expand or evolve as we get feedback from the parents. It would have been helpful to know this or that.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Tom, for all of this information. And I really do want to thank all of our panelists today because what they've said to you, I hope, has been very helpful. And I certainly have learned a lot, again, from listening to things that they've talked about and shared with you. So I really do want to thank them. I want to thank you for being Notre Dame parents, for listening tonight. And again, thanks to our Office of Information Technologies and to the DeBartolo Performing Arts Center for allowing us the use of this space. Just a brief commercial announcement from the Parents Program. I had indicated to you that the program exists to keep you informed, and clearly tonight was a great opportunity for that. But we also have opportunities for you to become involved at Notre Dame, and one of those is coming up in May. If you in your local area would like to coordinate a Mothers of Notre Dame Mass, please look at the parents' website to see how that's done or contact me. The other is in August when we welcome our new parents back to campus. If you would like to be a minister of hospitality, I invite you again to let me know, and I'm more than happy to put you on that list and have you be a part of that great day. Today is Ash Wednesday, the beginning of the season of Lent. I'd like to thank you for taking the time tonight to watch this program. And I want to wish each of you God's blessing as you journey through Lent. Thank you and good night.